Joy Baldridge, and I'm here to talk to you about mental health and wellness with joy. I've spent my entire life, I've been in the speaking business since birth because I was raised by entrepreneurs and educators. So, yes, I'm Joy Baldridge, and I'm here to bring a little more joy to your world in the way that we can talk about mental health and wellness. And I like to give pragmatic, practical solutions that you can immediately use. So depending on what you're looking for when it comes to this topic, I like to give so many ideas that you can just pick and choose the ones that you want to actually use that you feel will be most beneficial. Wanted to start by talking about this Corona coaster that we're on, this wild ride of the ups and downs of the pandemic. On top of everything else, it makes things quite challenging because there's so much uncertainty. But when nothing is certain, anything is possible as long as you remain flexible and adaptable. And according to Fortune magazine, you need two characteristics to even have any joy in life in this millennium. And those two characteristics are flexibility and adaptability. So I did more research on that, and I realized that in my practice, flexibility means to bend without breaking, and adaptability means to adjust to circumstances. So it has become a mantra that's helped thousands of people that I've spoken to over the past 30 years. And the way it works is you tell yourself, you know what? I am flexible and adaptable. According to the psychological research, anything that you say after the words I am, it starts to help to define who you are psychologically. And it creates a better situation if you say, I am what flexible and adaptable, for instance. Now, some people say, well, you can't always be flexible and adaptable, and things happen and things go wrong, and there's pain and there's suffering and there's uncertainty that can be quite debilitating. And yet, if you give it a try and tell yourself, I'm flexible and adaptable, and in order to make this really work, the 4-4-6 breathing technique is a concept that can help. And you are probably very familiar with a variety of breathing techniques. The one that I like the most is the 4-4-6. And you inhale for 4 seconds, you hold it for 4 seconds, and you exhale to 6. And so just to get ready for this learning, let's do a 4-4-6 now. So you're going to inhale for 4 seconds. 1, 2, 3, 4. Hold it. 1, 2, 3, 4. And exhale to 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And what I like about breathing from studying it is from an expert named Nina Mirror. And Nina Mirror, who has studied the physiological aspects of breathing and all the benefits to that, she said that breathing is your most easily accessible, yet most underutilized stress reducer. It's easy access because you can do it any time, but it's underutilized because we don't do it as often as really we need to in order to feel the benefits of the deep breathing. So the recommendation is to do the deep breathing like a ninja. It's one thing to know about it, but it's another thing to make a routine of it and see if you can just do the 4-4-6 several times a day and see how that helps with the peace of mind and also helps you to become a little bit more flexible and adaptable when uncertainty hits. Because there's so many things that we can't control. But two things that we can control are effort and attitude. So when we talk about the 4 core human emotions, the breathing helps a lot with the emotional aspects. And one thing I like about the deep breathing is I add an extra piece to it. I have some bubbles here, and on the exhale, I like to do a 6-second bubble stream just to make sure that I'm doing it correctly. So if you inhale for 4 seconds, 1, 2, 3, 4, hold it, 1, 2, 3, 4, and exhale to 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then take a moment and repeat. So if you can blow a 6-second bubble stream, that was a 6-second bubble stream. That was not. Wow, that was an 8-second bubble stream. The bubbles serve two purposes. Bubbles are nice, they're fun, they're light, they're airy, they're pretty. But They also can help you to control your diaphragm when breathing to make sure you're deep breathing properly. And I find that people who just grab a quick bubble bottle and do this deep breathing exercise a couple of times a day, it helps put them in the present tense as opposed to thinking ahead or thinking behind. So deep breathing puts you in the present tense, and 446 is a really nice way to keep track of the deep breathing, and do it frequently like a ninja. Whatever you're doing in your day, you can still do the 446 quite frequently and see how it works for you. And so in order to handle the uncertainty of the corona coaster that we're on, it helps to remember flexibility and adaptability is a good mindset. And how do you stay flexible and adaptable when there's so much that's difficult and challenging, and a lot of obstacles? The 446 is something that can be utilized. In addition to the 446 are the four core human emotions. The four core human emotions are mad, glad, sad, and scared. Four core human emotions, three of them rhyme: mad, glad, sad, and scared. How does this formula help when it comes to mental wellness? Well, it helps because there are primarily four human emotions, and I call them houses. So you have the house of mad, the house of glad, the house of sad, and the house of scared. And the question to ask yourself is, which house do you live in most? And how could you go about moving to a different mindset or a different house? That's the question to ask. Which house do I live in most? Some people are in the mad house. They're upset about certain circumstances, many times justifiably so, but they seem to be in the house of mad quite frequently. Some live in the house of sad because of certain circumstances that are sad, and some live in the house of scared, and some live in the house of glad. Do you know people like this? They're always happy, or some people that are always talking about sad things are always talking about things that make them mad, or always talking about things that make them scared. So of course, whatever you dwell upon is going to continue to grow and fester. But if you want to live in the house of glad, there is a capacity to move. So how do you move? How do you just go to the house of glad? It's not about just, being positive, because that's not good enough. We need some rooted ideas, some real concepts that work. Well, the way to go to the house of glad, you need to pay your rent every day. It's a metaphor. So if you pay your rent every day, you can live in the house of glad, and you will have the capacity to move. Now, the RENT is an acronym, and it stands for rest, exercise, nutrition, and thoughts. So rest, exercise, nutrition, and thoughts is the acronym Pay Your Rent Every Day. Now, I asked Dr. Jonas McIlharney, who's an emergency room physician in Raleigh, North Carolina. I said, what do you think about this rent concept for mental and physical health and well-being? And he said he thought it was very useful and very good. And I asked him, well, why? And he said, the people who come into the emergency room are usually coming in because they are not being cognizant of their behavior when it comes to resting, exercise, nutrition, and thoughts. He said, so your thoughts is the most important one. And I said, why do you say that? And he said, because your thoughts drive everything. And I like that quote from Dr. McIlharney. Your thoughts drive everything and help you to make decisions and choices, of course. So let's take each one separately, because everybody's different. So some people, they like to really work on how can I feel or be a little bit more rested. Rest is so elusive, especially with chronic illness. And my father, he was in a sleep study in the 1960s, and he created a concept called the purple break. And this is everything to do with the R in rent, rest, to help go live in the house of glad. So I'll give you an example of what a purple break is. You have a pigment in your eye. The science is that the pigment is called rhodopsin, and rhodopsin breaks down in bright light like fluorescent light and sunlight, and it's restored in total darkness. So when Dad was in the sleep study, he was in total darkness for 8 to 10 hours, and then he would feel so exuberant and he'd have more energy because he was restoring a pigment in his eye he didn't even know existed. Most people do not know about rhodopsin. If you're curious about the science, you can Google it. It's got an H in it, though. It's RHODOPSIN. Rhodopsin is also known, the layman term is visual purple. And visual purple is what we call a purple break because you're restoring the visual purple in the eye. So think about when you're anywhere, there's going to be sunlight, there'll be a fluorescent light. Even when you're sleeping, there's a cable box or sometimes a screen that lights up in your bed if someone's texting you silently while you're sleeping. It could be a night light, it could be a street light. There's so many light sources that interfere with our sleep. And so if you want to have more rest and you're wondering, how can I do this? Well, perhaps you might want to explore the idea of a purple break. So when Dad was in the sleep study and they had him sleep in the pitch black darkness, if you've ever been in a hurricane shutter, a room that had hurricane shutters, or like a cave where you lower the blinds and it's pitch black, that's how dark it was in the study. And he was so happy because he needed less and less time sleeping and he had more energy and it made him feel good and he was being very productive. But then after the study ended, he was traveling and he wasn't able to get that kind of deep, dark, rested sleep. And so what he developed was there's the purple break. So this is a patch, an eye shield. And maybe you sleep with an eye shield or maybe you don't. But a lot of people who even use eye shields don't realize the beauty and the benefit of it. So I'm going to give you a purple break experience right now. And you can do it with me. I love taking purple breaks and we'll see how you feel about them when we're done. So all you have to do is realize first we're going to close our eyes. And when you close your eyes, you're going to notice it's not dark, but you cannot see. And then if you take the palms of your hands and you cover your eyes, and I'm doing it too, that creates a nice dark environment. And that's what you need in order to restore the rhodopsin. Because the rhodopsin, when it's not restored, when it's broken down, it causes fatigue. So if you're covering your eyes and you're relaxing, you need to relax your forehead, relax your jaw, and relax your shoulders. And see how that feels, just having that darkness. And if you have an eye shield, you can put that on if you prefer. And then we're just going to do a very nice slow count backwards from 10 to 1. So you can just say to yourself 10, exhale, 9, breathe, relax your facial muscles, 8, 7, relax your shoulders, 6, 5, relax, 4, inhale, 3, breathe, 2, 1. Now, don't remove your hands and don't open your eyes because you're in an experiment. So keeping your eyes closed, slowly remove your hands with the eyes still closed and notice it's very bright. You almost see a red beacon, even though your eyes are closed, there's this brightness. It's almost like a red brightness, brighter than it was prior. And then slowly open your eyes. And that's a short version of a purple break. A purple break only lasts 1 to 2 minutes. That was about a 1-minute purple break. And think about how you feel right now. Everybody reacts differently to purple breaks. But what I hear most often from my research and the experiences with different audiences and groups that I've worked with is that when they remove their hands, it's so much brighter than they remembered it being. It's like a harsh brightness. And when opening the eyes, it sort of feels like the stress or is melting away. And sometimes you might feel a little sleepy, which is fine. So that's what a purple break is. Now, my father, he would take 6 purple breaks a day, 1 or 2 minutes each, for the last 45 years of his life. And he said it helped in so many ways. It helped cut the tension. It helped when he was feeling anxious. It helped when he was um, getting like exasperated or getting ahead of himself in the way that he was thinking when his mind would race ahead too much. Think about if and when your mind kind of races ahead, it kind of steadies. So that's what a purple break is. Then I was talking to someone who works at a mental health clinic in Connecticut, where I'm from, and I said, what's the tip? What are the useful ideas that you give people at your mental health clinic? And this is a place where a lot of people go when they have gotten just very sick, or they have gotten over stressed out, or they overdid it and they might have had a heart attack or a stroke. And she said, well, my favorite tool is called the smooth drop, drop, drop. I said, what's that? She said, well, you smooth your forehead, you drop your eyebrows, you drop your jaw, and you drop your shoulders. And it causes a relaxation state. So I thought, wow, what if we combined the purple break with the smooth drop, drop, drop? So that's something you can do also, is you can say, I want to take a purple break. Now, some people love purple breaks. And so if you like it, you can make comments on it. What do you think about the purple break? Is this something that you want to try? And what saddens me is sometimes this is the only time in someone's life that they're ever going to have a purple break, because they're going to forget to do it. So if you do like it, please write it down or make a note or grab an eye shield and make sure that you actually utilize the purple break. Now, one thing about the purple break I noticed is that, if your hands are like this and your head is in your hands, some people are going to think that you're upset. It's not a good body language look. And so I recommend that purple breaks are actually done lying flat on your back with your hands like this, or you can use the eye shield. That's the better way to do it. I also notice when I put my head in my hands and I put my head down, it feels like kind of a depressing type of body language, because, the head and the hands is pretty much known for that as the instant reaction. So there's a lot of little nuances to this. One time I got in a little bit of a quandary with the purple break. I was driving and I was so tired, I couldn't remember how long my last blink was, which kind of scared me. And so I had to pull over and I did a purple break. And then there's a knock at the door and it's a police officer. And I said, yes, officer. And he said, is everything okay here? I said, it's all fine, officer. I'm just taking a purple break. It's like, a purple what? And I have a line for you to walk. And I said, oh, no, no. Are you ever tired? He said, yeah, I'm tired now. I said, well, you have a pigment in your eye. It's called rhodopsin. It breaks down in bright light, restored in total darkness, helps you to relax and breathe, and you'll get through your shift. So I got out of that one. But it's something that is necessary. It's called self-care, right? It's called about being kind to yourself. And it's a very nice way to do that. So we've talked about so far AFA, flexible and adaptable. We talked about when nothing is certain, anything is possible, and we're all being affected by this corona coaster on top of everything else that we are dealing with. And the 446 is a really good way to cut the tension, because it's a structured deep breathe, and the bubbles are optional. You can decide if you want to use the bubbles to monitor the exhale and see how you're doing. You could take a purple break anytime you want. Look for light sources where you sleep. Make sure you're in a much darker environment. And when you're sleeping in the day, you also want to be very cognizant of the light, because it will affect you. And you know what? Sometimes I don't even know what to do when there's uncertainty. So I have a source that helps me quite a bit. And that source is the 8-ball. And ever since this pandemic, I've felt it's a very precarious time. And so I shake the 8-ball, and it's times like these that I turn to it as a trusted advisor. And it says, I say to it, is this pandemic ever going to end? And it says that it's a little bit hazy right now, and it wants me to try again. So the reading is hazy. We're trying again. Will this pandemic ever end? And it says, yes, it is certain. So it will end. And I want to know when. When will it end? And then it says, that is not certain. So I don't know what the ending is, but I do know that my father had some very good quotes as family mottos. And one of these quotes was, in life, it's really important to see if you can learn how to function in disaster and finish in style. And that quote has really gotten me and many, many people through some extremely difficult, challenging times and obstacles. To function in disaster and finish in style are words that I've found quite useful. So I'm going to end with some of the distorted thinking that we have that interferes and steals our joy. And most common are the 10 I'm going to share with you. And we all think things that can be a little bit distorted, and that's pretty common. So it's really a matter of realizing and catching it. So the first one is all or nothing thinking, that will never work, or that always does this, the always and never. It's very, very debilitating to think in the all or nothing. So that's number one. Number two is overgeneralizing. And that's when you have one little single negative thought that you have, and then it gets kind of blown out of proportion. And we just focus on that one thing, and we don't see all the other things that could be more positive around it. So number two is overgeneralization. Number three is called the mental filter. And the mental filter is when we dwell again on things that are not as positive as they can be. And sometimes that distorts reality. So having a mental filter and seeing what we want to see is something to be careful about doing. And I have this list of 10. I will have it available to you. We can post it. Number four, and again, these are thoughts that can cause distorted thinking, is disqualifying positive things. Because I have a friend, Daniel Burris, and he is a physicist. And he said, Joy, good follows bad and bad follows good. There is an upside and there is a downside to most anything. And that is a law in physics. And he said, so some people, when they disqualify the positive, that can be quite detrimental and cause the distorted thinking because there are upsides and downsides to everything. So number four is disqualifying the positive. Number five is jumping to conclusions. Have you ever done this? Where you start to assume something when you jump to conclusions. You hear partial facts or partial information, and then all of a sudden you race to the conclusion. I know when my mother was diagnosed with cancer, non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, we had to really watch ourselves from jumping to the conclusions as to all the horrible things that we were thinking. So just take the facts as they come and be aware that part of distorted thinking has to do with number five, jumping to conclusions. Number six is magnifying things. It's also called catastrophizing. And that's when we see things as a catastrophe often. Some things are catastrophic. There's no doubt about that. And we acknowledge that to release it. If it's catastrophic and we don't like that, according to Dr. Albert Ellis, who is the father of rational thinking, he says that if you acknowledge what's a catastrophe or debilitating or awful, you say this is awful or I hate this, then you can release it. But ignoring it doesn't help. And so that's why sometimes the Pollyanna, positivity that's a little bit too out there, too positive, that could be almost like ignoring it. And it can actually be annoying as opposed to acknowledging to release. And so when it comes to magnification, you want to be sure to catch any catastrophizing that we tend to do as people. Number seven is emotional reasoning. This is an odd one. Emotional reasoning is we feel it, therefore it's true. Have you ever done this? Like I'll feel anxious and then I'll think all these bad things are happening and then I'll realize, wait a minute, what is the root of this anxiety? And let me look a little bit more through that. So a distorted thought could be instantly reacting to something and having this emotional reaction to it that may not even be true. It might be our emotions getting the best of us and escalating. So number seven is emotional reasoning. Number eight, and this is really a bad one, and I've done this, I don't know if you have, is should statements. that shouldn't be this way. You should know better. He should know better. They should know better. The should is a very dangerous word. And what the studies have shown in psychology is that the more people say should or shouldn't or ought, these statements can raise your blood pressure and cause tremendous anxiety, because what they do is they set people up to be frustrated, because should is nothing. You can't do a should. I went to an anger management seminar. I don't have an anger management issue. I'm not in the house of mad. I strive to live in the house of glad and make that my primary residence. And I was just going to see, like, what is anger all about, and what fuels that? So I had to go late because I had another meeting that morning, 300 people in a ballroom. And the instructor sees me sneaking in 30 minutes late, and he stops the whole seminar and points to me like this and says, "You're late." And I was a little taken back by that. 300 heads turn around and look at me. He says to the audience, "Should she be late?" And they're like, "No." They ratted me out. And then he said, "Yes, she should be late." And they're like, "What?" And he said, "Because she is. Should doesn't count. Should isn't anything. It is what it is." And should can be very dangerous, because it can be dangerous in a negative way, like they should know better. And it tends to make you mad, which puts you in the house of mad. It's a frustrating word. It causes anger. Now, as I was mentioning, you've got the four emotions: the house of mad, the house of glad, the house of sad, and the house of scared. Um, and I'm saying that in your day, you're going to be visiting every one of those houses, because everybody in a day is going to feel mad and sad and scared and glad. That's how our human emotions work. What I'm saying is, you want to know when you're done being mad or done being sad, or you want to try to go back to glad and think about things that do make you glad, because there is an up and downside to everything based on physics, according to Dr. Dan Burris. So the last two, number 9, is labeling. Yikes. Or mislabeling. Labeling is very dangerous. I mean, it's calling people names, actually. Labeling is, "Oh, that guy's such a jerk," or "they don't really get it," or "how insensitive," or they're just a mess." That's labeling. You're saying a label that's not very nice, and it causes animosity, and it causes upset and anxiety. There are two words, I am. Sometimes we label ourselves. Like, I remember I used to drop things a lot, and I would say, "Oh, I'm such a klutz." And then I'd drop something and I'd be with somebody. I would say, see what a klutz I am? I just dropped that. I am. Whatever you say after those two words, I am. Wayne Dyer has a whole book about this, and it's the I am. And I think Joel Osteen also writes about the I am. Anything you say after I am is very precious and very sensitive. So listen to the voice in your head and see if you can be kind to yourself. You know, there's a few different rules in interpersonal communication. There's the golden rule, which we all know: treat people the way what? You want to be treated. But then there's the platinum rule. Who knows the platinum rule? You can put it in the chat box if you know the platinum rule. The platinum rule is to treat people the way they want to be treated, and we're not them. So how do you treat someone the way they want to be treated? You have to ask questions to understand where they're coming from and be a little bit flexible and adaptable. But then I created something called the diamond rule. So the golden rule: treat people the way you want to be treated, which is kind and respectful. The platinum rule is to treat people the way they want to be treated. So understand where they're coming from before you make comments to them, to be more sensitive to them and how they feel and how they react. But the diamond rule is to treat yourself the way you would want to be treated. And we're harshest on ourselves. So treat yourself the way you want to be treated. So I'm no longer a klutz, because I decided I wasn't going to talk like that to myself. And so see how you're talking to yourself, listen to the voice, and occasionally you can even tell yourself enough, which is a really good word, to stop and regroup and think, and then take a breath and take a moment. And the last of the 10 is personalization. And that's what causes you to overly analyze things and then start to feel like you're the cause of certain things and overly apologize. And so if you take it too personally, you tend to be someone who's very apologetic. "Oh, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." You know, people like this, they're always apologizing. And it's because they're oversensitive or over personalizing it. And so as this seminar is coming to an end, this Facebook Live. I've shared with you the top 10 distorted thinking concepts to see if any of these apply to you, and if they do, how you can remedy or modify that behavior and that thought process. I've also talked to you about how you can be flexible and adaptable. I've been sharing this concept to tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of people in the 30 years I've been in this practice, keynote speaking all over the world to the biggest audiences. And it's catching on. It's catching on. You know, they'll email me and say, Joy, I was having the worst day, or something was happening, or I was talking to this person, I was getting so upset. And then I just remembered it's okay because I'm flexible and adaptable. I can handle this. I take that 4-4-6 breathing method and it really works. So I'm going to leave you with this. My father, again, is my source of wisdom. And he had another expression in addition to function and disaster and finish and style and the purple break. This is one of my favorites and a favorite of many. He said, you know, Joy, you can bring a horse to water, but you can't make it drink. I said, yeah, Dad, everybody knows that. There's nothing innovative about that. You can bring a horse to water, but you can't make them drink. I'm sure you've all heard that one. And he said, but you know what you can do? And I'd say, there's no can do to that. The horse is stubborn and they won't drink. And he said, you can salt the hay. And then he'd say, what happens when you salt the hay? He said, the horse will get thirsty. And then what will happen? The horse will drink. So he went on to say, behind every two can'ts is a can. So if I can't do this and I can't do that, the next question needs to be, what can I do? Because a lot of times we can't do this and we can't do that. And then we say, I tried and I tried again. But think about the salt the hay concept. And when you really get stuck, and it's very easy to get stuck, now more than ever, just remember you can salt the hay and find a way, because behind every two can'ts is a can. So I'm Joy Baldridge. I'm in all social media. You can reach out to me, joy@joybaldridge.com. And I'm happy to answer any questions that might be coming up. Thank you.
Joy?
Yes.
Hi, can you hear me okay?
I can hear you. Yes, here she is. Yep.
Hi, we have a couple questions that came in.
Good.
The first one is, how do you know if you are employing a form of automatic negative thinking, and how can you avoid it?
Well, you know you are employing it when you start to pay attention to your thoughts. For instance, you might be doing the purple break and you might be saying to yourself, oh, I don't want to do this, or I'm hungry, or I don't feel like this. Or you catch yourself. Sometimes we write down. I write down what my thoughts are. I like journaling, and I'll get a feeling and then I'll start writing down what that feeling is. So you do have, it's a good question, because you do have to catch yourself. Sometimes we're so used to the way we think, we don't even realize that we're thinking in a negative way. But if you start to catch yourself, now that you're aware, self-awareness is key. If you say to yourself, they should know better, or they shouldn't do this, or you find you're getting very opinionated about something, or you're getting angry about something, that's when the negative thinking happens. I don't find people think negatively when they're in the house of glad, when they're laughing, when they're enjoying the company of someone else, or having a good time watching a movie or Netflix or something. That's not usually where the negative thinking. The negative thinking comes if you've ever felt guilty about eating a cookie. That's negative thinking. And then you escalate into all this catastrophizing. You know, I want to lose the 10 pounds and I can't in a pandemic. And the next thing you know, my husband brings home the cookies and I told him not to do it. This is all negative thinking, right? You're thinking it in your head. So be an observer. If you step outside yourself and imagine that someone else was possessing your mind, then you listen with new ears and see your life with new eyes. That's what I would recommend. I hope that helps.
Yeah, that was great. Another question that we have you ever worked with people with chronic illnesses or depression? If so, what advice do you have for those who are repeatedly facing difficult circumstances and negative thinking?
I truly have. As a matter of fact, very close to home, my mother had a debilitating physical and mental illness for my whole life. And we were in and out of hospitals a lot. And it was quite upsetting because my mom and my dad are both my best friends. And the way that we handled it, because it was just so stressful, is we would first of all talk about it, and we would talk about it with someone that we trusted, that we felt had our best intentions at heart. We would be very selective as to who we would talk to. Again, I like to journal and I like to write things that are positive. So I would think about things in the day, like 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 Dan Burris said, that there are glimmers of positive even in the most dire of circumstances. And so, just a butterfly going by that you happen to see is a glimmer, right? A friend of mine recently passed away from a terrible illness, and I saw this yellow butterfly fly across my face and land on my chest. And ever since then, I always think of him when I see a yellow butterfly. It's just your thinking can morph and change. I read every day positive literature. I know that words matter. Words are containers of power, and we have to be extremely careful what words we put in our mind. And as I was preparing for this event, I was thinking about a movie I thought was fantastic, and I recommend everybody see it if you haven't. It came out years ago. It's called What the Bleep Do We Know? What the Bleep, BLEEP, do we know? And it's about quantum physics. And it's fascinating, really. Literally, they had a study where they would yell at a glass of water, and then they would put another glass of water in sunshine and nice Mozart music, and then they would put them under the microscope and see that the glass was black under the microscope. You couldn't see it by the naked eye. That was being yelled at, and the one that was being nurtured with music and with sunlight was clear and fine. So I know it's hard because we think, oh yeah, smile and be positive, and that's a bunch of bunk. That's why I asked Dr. Jonas McIlharney if he liked the rent concept. Pay your rent every day, rest, exercise, nutrition, and thoughts. And when he said the thoughts were the most important because they drive everything. So I would say that if you wake up and I have a positivity pal, my friend Joanne Flynn, and every couple of days we send each other a quote that we think is positive. And literally, I wake up and I read 3 different books. I just flip and I point and I read what it says. And then I flip and I point to the next book and I read what it says. And that helps start my day very positive. And that's what Mom and I did when she was suffering so much. So it's easy to discard things like this because they're kind of made fun of sometimes, even Saturday Night Live. I am successful, these silly parodies. But the language is behavior, and behavior is language, and it does work. And also, of course, you have to talk to your doctor and confide in that person and ask how they can help assist you with any pain, physical or psychological pain. And it's hard. My mother was on every psychological pain drug there was, and I saw on a podcast, I heard on a podcast, they said putting like Prozac, giving someone Prozac sometimes is like putting oil on the engine of a car instead of in the hole it belongs in. It's kind of this smattering of things, and the side effects are horrible. And yet, what's the alternative? To not try to find new things that can help. And yes, maybe there's some remedies that are more natural. So that's a long answer, but I'm just talking from my heart because for 40 years of my life, when my mom was starting to have her worst situations, we were in and out of hospitals, and we really tried to see the positive or the humor or something nice, if we could. Can I tell you one quick other example?
Sure.
I was in the hospital when my dad was almost gone from cancer, and it was the day before he passed. And the doctors, they were not very sensitive. Do you know doctors like that? They're very smart, but they don't have that human sensitivity gene. I guess Jennifer Aniston was talking about when she was gone, leaving Brad Pitt, but they just lack the sensitivity gene. And they were being very clinical. And my father was dying, and they said it was like a horse race, and which was going to harm him the most. And I thought I would just lighten it up a little bit. And I said, doctor, I wish you could give me a brain transplant. And they looked at me like I had lost my mind. I said, because my father, he memorized every word in the dictionary. And they looked at me skeptical. And I said, you know, he was on a battleship in World War II, and the only book he had was a dictionary. So he read it like for 2 years, and he knows every word in the dictionary. And they looked at me like, yeah, right. So then I said, test him. And literally, this is the day before my dad was gone. And the guy threw out this word that I don't remember the word, but my father, I remember him saying, that's a tough word. He said, nobody would know that word. And then he said, you're really trying to trick me, aren't you, doctor? And the doctor laughs all smug, like, yeah, you don't know what you're talking about. And my father said it'd be really tough, but you know what? Does it have something to do with music? And the doctor looked at him perplexed, like surprised, and he's like, it has to do with a wind instrument, does it not? Isn't it a form of reed in a wind instrument? And that's exactly what it was. It was a reed in the wind instrument. But I threw that question out at a time when it was quite sad, depressing. My best friend is dying. It's my father, and we're very close. And yet I thought, you know what? I'm going to test these doctors. I'm going to throw something out. I'm going to play a little game with them and see what happens. And it just, I'll never forget the story. And I was so proud of my dad. And I thought it was quite, it kind of held up his integrity and respect. And I don't know, you just try to think of things that you can do differently than you're doing now and change your thinking. If you're going to do something, I call it the oppositivity. When I was really depressed, and I've had a bout of depression, I remember saying, I want to do oppositivity thinking. I want to think of the exact opposite of what I'm thinking and feeling. I'm going to write it down. And sometimes I would laugh because it was so absurd because I was still feeling really awful. But it just starts to put a little bit of a crack into the armor there, and then it opens it up. So I hope that helps as well.
Definitely. Thank you so much, Joy. We really appreciate the time that you spent with us this afternoon. Thank you for taking the time to answer questions. And then we'll follow up, if there's any questions that we missed. But right now it looks like that's it. So thank you for your time.
Thank you. And thank you, everybody. And please contact me if you'd like, joybaldridge.com. You can reach me, joy@joybaldridge.com. I also have a book, The Joy in Business, and it's just positive ways to think and be. And it just came out a year ago. And if you really want some help with this, that's a really good resource. The Joy in Business by Joy Baldridge. It's on every bookstore in the world. So just click on that, read a few chapters for free and see what you think. And please keep in touch. I'm happy to correspond with you. So I'm at joy@joybaldridge.com. Let's keep in touch and keep each other up and positive regardless of circumstance. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
It's my pleasure. Bye.